I feel like I need help, so I'm making this video in hopes that the right person will find it and have something constructive, useful for me in a comment or contact me one way or the other. I mentioned in the last video about how I was raised Southern Baptist and that John and I were kind of psychic. Well, when I met him, he was a Mormon priest, or well, RLDS. And he converted to Baptist, Southern Baptist. And we went there, and we had a friend, Bob Alt, who I've mentioned, that we used to look around this area cemeteries with and go up to Bunston at Speed, Missouri to look at the railroad trestles. So he asked us to go to the church that he went to up in, it was either Lee Summit or Independence, because at one point in time the pastor moved and the church services were in her house because they had lost their building. So when she moved, of course, the church moved. But we went a number of times with him, and then they came down because it was a spiritualist church when we were having trouble with that old house. And my mom was there one time. They came before Mom left after her soap operas, our soap operas, ended that day. And she just kind of sat there real quiet, observing, soaking it all in. And then we talked about it later, but I won't go into that because it was just, chit-chat. But they had blessed and cleansed that house with, I forget now, cedar and sumac, I think, but I really can't be sure right now because they had found an apex in Brad's room and thought that might be part of the problem why he was acting the way he was. That was before he was diagnosed officially with ADHD. And they made a recording in that old downtown house bathroom upstairs of a guy saying to the ladies, I stayed downstairs with my mom, but John and the team went upstairs with him. And they did the little prayer circle and did the smoker for the cleansing. And I had a little recorder, and he captured on that recorder when Edna told that spirit in the bathroom to go to the light. It said, I don't want to go to the light. So she kept on telling it, And then Brad got a hold of the recorder a couple years later and decided just to record, and it went right on top of it. I didn't have it saved right, so it got destroyed. But I did play it for at least one or two people before that. But see, these people here, this was a quote that came from off Google Books, I believe it was. I found it on Google Books. The Mormon Church constructed a cover-up blaming the entire massacre solely on Indian depredation. And that reminded me so much of the lies told by my stepdaughter, who was also brought up in that church, or not that one, I believe, or a combination of these two, but actually they were a splinter off of it. And I do have information on that bunch in a note, I believe, called Cults. But there might be some in this too, because sometimes I would cross-reference. Excuse me. So, I guess I'll spend the rest of my time hoping that there's a way, or finding a way, to disprove what she said of me. That I was gone all the time. That let that happen, what she said happened. Which was that she was raped 2,100 times by my spouse. Well, after the case was closed, he got it up to state level. And that's a common thing where they'll start working on the law. Jail cell lawyers and jailhouse lawyers. But they can really screw stuff up too, just as easily. And it got close at state level, but I'll always believe after they did get it to state level that it wasn't even looked at like it should have been. Because they would have seen, if it had been even opened, that that was a case concerning a juvenile. And you know how they are about protecting the juveniles until it gets to this case. Then I was told to come up and get the files if I wanted them, because the state defender said she was cleaning out the storeroom, making room. So I drove up and got them and brought them home. And I was not pleased with what I saw, but it did validate some of the things that I had gone through, like the satanic stuff. I tried to get help for her. I'd spoken to a friend about her. She didn't know what to do. She was an older person and had already raised her kids, so I figured, well, start there. And I met her while we were out drinking coffee one time. So, but my dad knew her for years before that. Anyway, she didn't have a clue, really. So I was pretty much on my own. And I ended up getting on the internet to see what I could find to try to help ourselves. But the things I saw also not only validated feelings that I had, there was a creep factor there. Things I couldn't quite put my finger on at the time, except for one instance up there in Iowa in the courtroom. We were at divorce decree modification hearing, and the girl answered me. I mentioned something to her, and she answered me in a guttural tone. I forget now what it was. And then I responded, and with my response, I was called over to John's attorney's office and kind of reprimanded. But it was always like she had to be the bigger dog in the yard, you know? My dog's bigger than your dog. That kind of bigger dog in the yard. The one-upmanship thing. And other things I read too just pretty much curdled my blood. Because, see, I had asked for help. And John tried to get sessions through family services because she was already accustomed to the system in that way in Iowa, and I'm pretty sure they run along the same lines. They're not the exact same people wearing the exact same clothes in the exact same position in the office, but pretty much it's the same because they're a nationwide department. Pretty much, you know. But they didn't want to give her any help. They turned him down. We aren't a single mother, you know. If her mother had tried that, she probably would have gotten her help. But it wasn't her mother trying it, it was he and I. So he ended up getting it on his own because she wrote her cousins. She had another part of their family up there. And they either wrote her or vice versa. And they ended up sending literature to the Wellsprings Retreat, which is exit therapy, where they had gone to break away from the group. And yes, the group was that strong that it would get a hold of people and make it difficult for them to go. They were either using threats or scare tactics or whatever to keep a hold of their members. But that whole family of her cousins were up there. And when we found out of such thing as exit therapy, he tracked down one in Columbia where we went all three together. I would go up and get my medicine from my doctor. My appointments were only like 15 minutes long to get my scripts filled. And he would get his at the VA. And then we'd take her to hers. Well, right before they started, she tried to push me down the stairs. I started to tell the part that led to that first, but then I cut to the chase. But we were headed up the stairs, and John was behind me, and it was just lights off downstairs like it was every night after a certain part of the news. We'd turn it off and hit the lights and go upstairs. Well, she was in front of us. And there was a light switch at the bottom and a light switch at the top. Well, she got to the top. No, wait. She tried to push me down the stairs or over the railing. I caught myself, and John steadied me from behind. But then she ran on up to the top and hit the light switch while we were still on the stairs, which really outraged me to be done that way. You know, that's mean. And so I jumped up the stairs right after she did. I was pretty much on her heels. But she got in her room and slammed her bedroom door and put a lock on it. We had a hook on the inside of that door. And that really made me mad. I said, you know what? I wish I could just mail you back to your mother. You'd be gone in the morning if I could. And I demanded that she open the door. And when she did, I shoved her. And she kind of stumbled back a couple steps and landed securely on her bed, a little twin bed in there. It was a very small room, but I'm running out of minutes, so I'll continue here in a few.